Get ready, Anthony, there's a new Kid Cuddly album on the way. You're gonna love it.
Hi, everyone. Here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Mick Jenkins album, The Healing Component. This is the full-length commercial debut record from Chicago rapper Mick Jenkins, who broke a couple of years ago with his critically acclaimed mixtape, The Waters, which brought a pretty synthetic, wavy, and nautical vibe to the world of conscious hip-hop. Now personally, I have been let down by Mick's attempts to follow this project up, most namely on his little Waves EP. So now I'm on this new project. I'm hoping for a miracle here. Hoping he pulls through with something a little more worthwhile. And while I do give Mick an A for effort on this thing, this album and its concept are nowhere near as profound as he seems to think it is. Which all starts at this introduction where Mick is essentially framing himself not as a rapper, but more of a prophet who is about to educate his audience as to what the healing component is. Ooh, what's the healing component, Mick? I just don't know. I'm too stupid to understand. Please explain it to me like I'm a baby. When you are as bold on your album to put yourself in a position where you're talking down to your audience or talking to them for their benefit, then what you're about to say better be pretty mind-blowing. Especially considering that the introduction here is not the only time we are subject to this airheaded conversation that works as a segue between many of the tracks here. Now, as it turns out, spoiler alert, the healing component is like love. It's love. Which is not a terrible topic, but a topic that Mick delivers nothing but cliches on. Whether he's talking about romantic love, or the world would be greater if we just loved each other. We need to spread love. We need to love ourselves in order to love others. You love different people differently, and you have a literal fence around your heart. And of course, all these messages come with a little side of Jesus, the J-Man. Now, there are a few moments where I think Nick takes an interesting narrative angle where he points out maybe a vacuum of love or a lack of love where we think there is, sort of like on the track Strange Love, where I guess he's kind of pointing out these inconsistencies where, hey, we're saying, we're convincing ourselves that we love ourselves, but we're seeing all this hatred, we're seeing all this violence, something isn't quite adding up. And on the song Drowning, with Bad Bad Not Good doing the production, doing the instrumental in the background on this track, love the instrumental on this cut. I actually love Mick's performance on this track as well. His vocals sound less like a rapper and more like an old bluesman or like a soul singer or something. And I actually think his lyrics on this cut are pretty intriguing, as he makes reference, I believe, to a lyric from Kanye's Yeezus, the closing track there, Bound 2, as Kanye says, hey, when a real one holds you down, you're supposed to drown. And Mick sort of takes that line, while it does sound good, says, wait a second, something's not quite right here. Like, I'm supposed to feel like I'm drowning? What? Sort of making this statement that love, real love, shouldn't feel abusive or harmful or painful in any sort of way, which I guess sounds and feels nice, but I think a lot of the time Mick's observations on the topic of love are pretty surface level. I don't know, sometimes love might hurt, sometimes love might feel like a bad thing, sometimes love might not be that good. And what are the obstacles of love? Why are the reasons we're not loving each other? What makes love so hard? And what makes Mick think that the world can just love each other, that everybody can just love themselves if they tried? Or at least he doesn't cast any doubt that that can happen on this record. What about people who just don't deserve any love at all? I mean, love is something that I don't think should just be automatically given. It's something that I think should be earned, a lot like trust, and not everyone is trustworthy. Half the time, as I'm listening to the super idealistic lyrics of this record, it's like I'm just being told an empty promise, which is not the feeling I want to come away from this record with, especially given all of these lines where Mick is essentially using his art to give the unwashed masses water, water, water. On the song Plugged, he goes as far as to say that he has something that his audience needs, for the billionth time comparing THC or the healing component to drugs. Truth be told, there's a real lack of conceptual maturity on this record, because once Mick has established some of these ideas about love and has delivered some of these flagship tracks toward the beginning of the record, he starts just kind of I don't know, detouring into different musical styles, I guess to kind of pad the record out or give it some sort of variation. Like on the song As Seen in Bethsaida, which features these awful, like, roaring dubstep bass lines that I want to avoid like the plague. Or on the song Communicate, which might be a statement on sex and drugs, but doesn't really end up sounding like a statement, just more like another track about sex and drugs itself, especially given the kind of hip house instrumental thumping away in the background. Not to mention this track features lyrical gems such as Are You Bae? I don't mean the San Francisco type. And she wants a guy that can sing, but she only ever wants to hear the C notes. The C notes. But the tracks on this record that I think are tolerable, that I think are good, a lot of them aren't even that impressive to me when compared to Mick's earlier material. Not only because I think some of the ideas behind this record are weak, but the production isn't anything altogether new for Mick a lot of the time, although it does occasionally go into something a little jazzy. I guess my main gripe with the music and a lot of Mick's lyrics and his rapping on this album is that it is so understated. It's so sleepy. It's so faint. It's so spacey and moody that a lot of it just doesn't leave an impact, an impression on me. Mick occasionally delivers a really passionate performance, like on the song Fall Through, or the opening track as well, which I thought flow-wise was pretty fiery. And he pulls together a good verse or a nice string of wordplay, like on the closing track, the Fucked Up Outro, which to me just kind of feels like a closer out of nowhere because it doesn't really tie up the concept of the album or anything, in my opinion. It just kind of works as a finisher because it has one of Mick's most impressive lyrical moments on the record. So in a way, I guess it's a finale. Most of the time, it just seems like Mick is unsure as to what to do with this very weak idea of a concept. And a lot of the time he depicts himself on this very record as indulging in a lot of the hedonistic and materialistic temptations that you would think someone who's kind of propping themselves up as a Christian would avoid. He doesn't even seem to acknowledge this inconsistency in any sort of way. I'm not saying Mick has to, sort of be a choir boy and be super behaved and can't do whatever he wants, but anybody who knows what Christianity is and understands what he's rapping about on some of these tracks will get some cognitive dissonance between the lines of these songs, and they just kind of go unaddressed. And maybe it could have made for an interesting topic. I don't know. And that to me is just one of many, many, many missed opportunities on this record. Love is such a huge and such an abstract thing. Mick could have taken this record down a lot of different paths, but instead he chose a very narrow view of love, I think. Either that or just like a non-view sometimes. Also delivered tracks that didn't really seem to support the narrative of the album, the concept of the album all that well either. And I don't know, this record just was not really one of his more impressive projects lyrically either. For sure it had its bright spots, but I feel like sometimes Mick wastes his potential, his lyrical potential, on tracks that don't really stand that well because, again, the foundation, the conceptual foundation that they're standing on is weak. So even though there are maybe some decent lyrics in there, some decent bars, decent rhymes, flows, wordplay, it's all kind of just a bit of a waste because the logic and the forethought that went into the bigger picture of this album is kind of flimsy. I'm feeling a strong 5 to a light 6 on this thing. Transition. Have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What do you think I should review next? And that's it, guys. Anthony Fantano, Mick Jenkins, the healing component. You're the best. Bye.